Hey everyone, welcome to There's Nobody Here Named Josh, the podcast where we are true to the name that there is nobody here currently named Josh. My name is Kevin, and I'm joined by Will.
What it do?
And today we have two special guests. We have Mr. Adam Upper, aka Stump Chunkman, who is the producer of this lovely podcast. Where is he?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Oh,
You vanished for a sec.
And we have a super special guest today. His name is Rivers Langley. He is right here. We'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, how's it going? Hello.
From Disgraceland himself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So let's a little bit first. Let's throw to Rivers, and we're talking about wrestling today. So you're my known wrestling person. So and you got that. So tell us a little about yourself, Rivers.
Well, I would say I'm a comedian based in Los Angeles, but I don't know. There's been no comedy since March, so I don't know what the hell I am.
Comedian on hiatus.
I don't know about that. The whole thing that's been going on is pretty funny to me. So
yeah, it's been great. Well, no, I guess I'm still technically a comedian. I'm just not a stand-up comedian at the moment because no one is. But yeah, I'm a podcaster. I got a podcast called The Goods from the Woods, and we're all big wrestling guys. I wouldn't say it's a wrestling podcast necessarily. I've definitely had people be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about your show, but I'm not really a big wrestling fan." I'm like, I'd say we probably devote, maybe 5 to 10% of the show to wrestling, but
there's always like casual stuff too. So it's like hardcore. So like someone like me who's not big into wrestling could be like have a general idea what's going on, but not be like too hardcore into it, sort of thing.
And poor Will here. Poor Will. I introduced him to wrestling for the first time a few days ago with an episode of WWF Superstars from the 1980s.
Okay.
And you should have heard his reaction from that. I don't know, Will. Wait, before we get into the topic, I have one more thing. I have to ask you the question, Rivers. I asked Adam this question, and I already got his answer. So, are you or anyone around you named Josh?
Not in my immediate circle. My roommate, my current roommate is actually leaving this apartment. He's going to be moving out to move in with a dude named Josh.
Okay, that works.
I'm also in a sketch group with said Josh, sketch group called Hush Money. Josh is a brilliant director and filmmaker.
Is that Josh anywhere near you right now?
No, I think he's in Highland Park.
All right, so that's good because we can't have anybody here named Josh.
Okay, that would be a disaster if there's somebody here currently named Josh. Then we would have to end the show.
We would have to be like, okay, we're done.
So it's like the final episode where it's all Josh's or something. I guess.
We'll all change our name to Josh. Okay, so we're gonna start into the topic now. That's right. Adam said it earlier. It's wrestling. Now this doesn't mean it's just one specific kind. Like it's pro wrestling, right? So WWE, WWF, WCW, any of the new stuff. I have to admit, I don't watch wrestling now. I'm a big 1980s, 1990s, early 2000 wrestling fan. The era of the Attitude Era and the WCW and the WCW versus WWF, that kind of stuff. I don't watch AEW. I don't watch Impact.
Oh, I bet you'd like it.
I bet you I would. I've seen a few people. I've seen a few matches. Like my buddy Alex was supposed to be here today, and he's a big AEW fan.
Well, I
don't even know what any of this is.
There is AEW stands for All Elite Wrestling. It's the newest the newest major promotion.
Oh, is that Jericho's one?
Yeah, Jericho's on it.
Okay.
He was their first big signing.
Okay.
And if you watch it, they are actively chasing that kind of mid-90s WCW feeling to it. Just the way that everything's set up, they've actually got layered storylines. The people running the company, don't have like the attention span of a squirrel. So there can be multiple things happening. They just did a big pay-per-view called the Stadium Stampede inside the empty football stadium for the Jacksonville Jaguars down in Florida. Okay. And one of their kind of big heroes, babyface characters is Hangman Page, and he's supposed to be a cowboy. His catchphrase is "I do cowboy shit," and and for the Stadium Stampede, the cowboy shit that he did was he chased a man down a football field on a horse and tried to beat his ass from a horse.
That's some cowboy shit right there.
That sounds a lot like Red Dead Redemption.
Oh. Yeah, very
totally
much
does.
so.
Totally
well,
does.
I was saying about that particular event, it's like, how many cowboys have there been in wrestling history? Like there's been, every generation has had 6 people being like, "Oh, I'm cowboy so and so, and I'm here to kick your ass." And this is the first time anyone's ever used a horse offensively.
I can think of 2 of them off the top of my head. Cowboy Bob Orton.
Sure, Randy's dad.
And the Smoking Guns. Billy Gunn. Billy and Bart Gunn. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, and then there's cowboy adjacent people. Double J, Jeff Jarrett. I guess he's more of like a country singer, but he's got the cowboy regalia. Dusty Rhodes always rolled with the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots.
Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Stan Hansen had the bull rope. Blackjack Mulligan, he went to prison for realsies. There have been cowboys, and just now somebody decided I'm going to be a cowboy and actually use my horse to attack someone in combat.
Do real cowboy shit.
We have a cowboy, and cowboys seem to be a running theme on this podcast for some reason.
Okay,
so we have a cowboy in wrestling now. Can we get that's Red Dead? We have the Red Dead that's taken care of. Can we get GTA? Can we get Trevor Phillips in here?
We've had the Wyatt family. They've come and gone. I would say
the Wyatt family.
That was kind of their whole thing, was sort of insane rednecks, right?
If we want to get Trevor from GTA, the first thing, I can't think of that dude's name off the top of my head. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But he would damage people like you wouldn't believe. He was a black man.
Were you talking about New Jack?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah, New Jack, for sure.
Yeah. That's about as close to Trevor from GTA as we can get.
Yeah, I mean, they've tried, I don't know, Blackjack, that's actually not bad. Yeah, I'd go with that. I was going to think of something like Festus. Was this character, how Trevor, his kind of special, Michael's thing is he's really, or Franklin's thing, he's really good at driving. Michael's thing is he's really good at shooting.
Yeah.
And then Trevor's thing is he's got the meth rage maniac thing.
Yeah.
There was, this was probably, you said you were into wrestling in the, the 80s through the early 2000s. So this probably happened right around the time you stopped watching. There was a character named Festus, played by currently Luke Gallows, Doc Gallows, who's a great wrestler. I think he got let go from WWE a couple months ago, and I believe he's on his way back to Japan.
I remember Festus.
Okay, yeah. So Festus sort of had Trevor's thing where, with Trevor, you click the little joystick and he goes nuts. With Festus, anytime the bell rang, he would go nuts. And that was his thing. He was very docile, he was kind of had his tongue sticking out, and then as soon as the bell rang, he would focus and then whoop ass, and that was sort of his deal. And then later, I think when he joined CM Punk's Straight Edge Society, was when he claimed that the reason he was doing that was because he was addicted to pills, and CM Punk put him on the right path because he was Jesus, essentially. That way.
My goodness. Okay.
Wow.
Now, Will here, my co-host, is only 19 years old.
Holy shit.
Okay. And he has never watched wrestling before. So all these names that we're throwing out here, he is completely clueless, right, Will?
Well, I know the Randy Man Macho Savage.
The Randy Man.
The Randy Man?
That's not his name, but yes.
Exactly.
No, what do you mean?
That's pretty Randy, though.
That's totally his name.
The Randy Man.
The Randy Man. Macho Savage,
Macho Man Randy Savage.
And the Hulk dude, Bruce.
Dude.
Bruce?
Bruce? No.
Bruce Hulk, yes. Bruce Hulk, yes.
Bruce Banner Hulk.
So earlier, before we all started, I was talking to him. I told him, this kind of lingo that we would be talking about. We said WWF, When we refer to WWF, it's like World Wrestling Federation, and then WWE is World Wrestling Entertainment, and WCW is World Championship Wrestling. And that kind of stuff. I told him what a face was and what a heel was, and
the faces are the good guys, right?
That's right. Faces are good guys.
I remember some stuff.
Faces are good guys, heels are bad guys, and when you see someone fall, it's called taking a bump.
Yep.
And things like that. So that's kind of the general wrestling vernacular.
Yeah. And speaking of bumps, I think Macho Man did a lot of those right before his promos.
Oh God.
Macho Man? Do you mean the Randy Man?
Randy Man.
Randy Man. Macho Savage.
Yeah, after this, show him some of his promos. Yeah.
No. You want to get crazy ass promos? You look at the Ultimate Warrior. Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, it's a pretty nuts. Yeah, but you guys start off with Macho Man though, because he's a pretty.
Gotta start out with the Macho Man.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't know why they just figured out that this would sell a bunch, but I was at Walmart out in Burbank a couple weeks ago, and Macho Man famously was the spokesman for Slim Jim.
Oh yeah,
the little I hesitate to call it meat, but the meat-like product snack they sell at the gas station. And now they have because Slim Jims are slim, they're like long and thin. They now have a thick one, like the size of like a. Let me see if I do this correctly. The size of a toonie, and it's like massive and thick. It's like it's like as thick as a hot dog, and it's called Slim Jim Savage size. And they've got Macho Man on the Slim Jim, and I was like, I bought it just because I'm a big Macho Man fan, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't eat it. I ate it, but
is it as bad as it sounds?
No, it's great. I mean, it tastes like nitrates and salt. Good.
It's like a regular one.
Salt saves it.
Yeah, but I mean, Macho Man was that much of a pop culture, kind of crossover figure. He's like it's similar to Hogan, except Hogan is tainted by the fact that even before everybody figured out he was like a racist shithead. He's also tainted by the fact that he wasn't a very good wrestler, which Macho Man very much was. And I don't know. Yeah,
he came from a wrestling family, right? The Poffos, right?
Yeah, his father was Angelo Poffo, who kind of notoriously ran in addition to wrestling on and off in Memphis and Texas, and a lot of these places. Angelo Poffo was famous for running outlaw promotions. Because back in the days before Vince McMahon kind of consolidated wrestling, starting in the early 80s when he bought the company from his father, wrestling was organized into territories. My co-host, Dr. Pat on the podcast is very, very well versed in the stuff. He is,
he sounds like someone I'd get along with as Dr. Popcorn.
Well, he is, it's Pat's a funny thing. Pat's a funny case because he's one of those people that Pat and I talk almost exclusively about like wrestling and Leonard Skinner and like dumb Southern stuff. But like Pat is legit one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. He is a professor of sociology at UCLA and stuff like that.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So, there are some, there's smart people that think about this stuff a lot, but Pat is kind of the scholar on the territories and stuff like that. But essentially the kind of easiest way to put it is wrestling was a cartel, much in the way oil is a cartel. So, all of these different areas of the country, kind of the most famous where y'all are would be Calgary. That would be Stu Hart, the Stampede, wrestling, all that stuff. Montreal had its own territory. Toronto was kind of looped in with a lot of the Great Lakes promotions and stuff like that. And they all competed and they shared a champion, the National Wrestling Alliance champion, the NWA champion. And that's where Dusty Rhodes kind of made his name. That's where Ric Flair is kind of the most well-known of the NWA champions. He would go around and, you'd have your territory's bad guy. So like the most badass guy in Minnesota, or the most badass guy in Texas would raise hell. And then all of a sudden at the end of the month, they'd be like, oh my God, Ric Flair's coming to town, the champion's here. And Ric Flair would wrestle the biggest bad guy in the territory and would usually barely win. And then he'd go away and go to the next territory. And the wrestling was like that from, basically the 40s all the way up through the 80s, at which point Vince McMahon bought his father's territory, which was commonly referred to as New York. So if you listen to old wrestlers talk, and they'll say like, oh, around that time I went up to start work in New York. That means WWF. Vince McMahon's father's territory was New York. Once Vince bought it, his dad on his deathbed, literally his dying words to his son was, please do not go national. Because the whole thing was, it's a cartel, right? So the way everybody makes money is by keeping the champion the same for everybody and moving him around and stuff like that, moving people up who are into more prominent positions. And so they all kind of work together. Vince McMahon's whole thing was, fuck that, fuck y'all, I'm going to buy up TV time. So at the time, wrestling was usually produced locally. It was produced at the television channel. So if you live in like Buffalo, New York, and it's like, oh, Channel 6, whatever, they would probably have a studio wrestling show that would be some way attached to the NWA. What Vince did was and they would actually, pay for that time. They'd be paying for the wrestling show. Vince McMahon was like, I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you for the TV time, for the national exposure. And that's how he ran everybody out of business. He just basically went across the country, bought up TV time everywhere. And that's how WWF became this huge behemoth in the 80s. And that's where you get Hulk Hogan and all that stuff comes out of that. Meanwhile, in the South, the last couple of promotions in the South that were around were Memphis and Jim Crockett. And Crockett was eventually bought out by Ted Turner, and that is what became WCW. So the regionalism between North and the South was already set up, very, very early on in the mid '80s. I forgot why I got talking about this, but anyway, that's kind of what you need to know. And shit, I'm sorry, brother, I forgot your name. But the guy, are you David, or 19?
Will is 19. Sorry. Yeah. Cut this out. I fucked up. Will, the one term you need more than anything else, and it's not just because of a wrestling thing, but because this is how American politics are now. Kayfabe, which is basically. Sorry, go. They don't even follow kayfabe anymore. They
well, not in wrestling, they don't. But our whole political system is that. It's just we're going to have these two sides. They're going to go out. They're going to argue, and then behind the scenes, they're going to all take money from the same people, and they're all best friends.
That pretty much sums it up right there. That's
it. Yeah. So it's anybody who would claim that pro wrestling is not is some sort of extra like dumb thing that is for trashy people, which is what my mother thinks. Like I do commentary for a pro wrestling promotion out here in Los Angeles, and my mom, literally, when I got the job a few years ago, she was just like, "Oh my God, I can't tell that to the women's club. Like, it's embarrassing." But it's become our life. It's what it is. It's evoking emotion for the purposes of making more money, making money off of people. It's like, all right, if Ric Flair comes in and tells you that he's going to screw your wife and everyone you know's wife, then you're going to come back to see him get his ass kicked.
Well, back then, Ric Flair probably would.
And he would. Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, he absolutely would do that. Without hesitation.
Now, Will, you had a description of wrestling. We were talking earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
You had a description of wrestling, which I think is pretty accurate, and I think that probably Rivers and Adam may find this funny. So, how did you describe wrestling when I showed it to you?
Well, it wasn't when you showed it to me. I thought about it later, and I thought, well, this is exactly what it is. Basically, from what I can tell with wrestling, we're getting a bunch of men together to sit down and watch some half-naked dudes hug each other violently in a grotesque display of testosterone.
No, that's not. That's UFC.
Now that I think about it, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, UFC is definitely far more homoerotic than wrestling is. I think, because they're like right on top of each other, like whatnot.
Well, I've always described it as it's extremely high level performance art.
It's theater. Wrestling is theater.
Yeah. It is the. I mean, it's an American art form. People, usually say, what is it? Musicals, comic books, jazz, and professional wrestling. Those are the 4 actual American art forms.
Wow, never heard that before.
What about fast food?
Huh?
What about fast food? I'd say America's figuring out fast food pretty good.
I mean, if you consider it an art form, then yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, they figured it out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I wouldn't go as far as an art form. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I said, comic books, jazz, musical theater, and professional wrestling, and all of those things kind of have in common that a lot of them at one point or another were seen as low art. You know what I mean? Like musical theater, jazz, especially, was seen as like, oh, this is there was no more threatening thing to kind of establishment types in the 1920s than your children getting into jazz.
Oh, heaven forbid.
You know what I mean? And now, of course, it's seen as very highbrow and stuff like that, but that was not always the case. Comic books. You guys know damn well that people still don't respect comic books.
They're still for children,
people, and it's very similar with wrestling, too, where people are like, oh, that's that, like, dumb redneck thing, and I'm just like, no, exactly. It is the last vestige in many ways of Greek theater. Like, going back, thousands of years, if you think of something like Sophocles, or you think of something like, going into Rome, like the Virgil, stuff like that, that sort of theater was produced in a time before amplification, first of all. That's very important to note. A lot of Greek theater relied on, the people would wear the big clay masks, right? So if you're putting on a production of, Oedipus Rex or Antigone or something, everybody would come out with these big clay masks, and the bad guys would have big frowny faces on the masks, and the good guys would have a big happy face on the mask, and that's where you get the symbol of drama and comedy. And that was literally so people in the cheap seats could tell who the bad guy was. And professional wrestling operates very much in the same way, where I'm sure, Will, you've just sort of seen it for the first time. Could you not immediately tell who was the bad guy?
No.
Huh?
No, I couldn't. I have no idea.
Will, I can barely hear you, man. Turn your mic on.
I was going to say.
Yeah, sorry. But I had no idea what was going on at all. Like I saw this dude named Mr. Fuji, and I was really excited, and then he lost, and I was sad.
Okay, but Mr. Fuji's a great example. So when he came out, like, what was he doing?
He was just kind of being there.
But he was taunting the crowd, right? He was taunting the crowd.
Yeah, with the crowd.
Yeah. So Fuji is a perfect example of a guy who comes out, when he's with I don't know if you saw any the stuff where he's with Yokozuna, but eventually he gets to the point where he's like handing off salt to Yokozuna to, like, he's tossing salt in people's face.
Oh,
that kind of thing. So, but he's a great example of somebody who is immediately, identifiable as a bad guy. I don't know. I
thought he was pretty cool.
Well, no, but that's the thing is typically the bad guys do end up being cool to people because that's what happens. I mean, Terminator was such a cool bad guy. They made him the good guy in the second one, So that happens. But my point is that all of the performers ideally should be very quickly identified by the audience as being, their role should be pretty obvious, either good or bad, and that goes right back to Greek theater. It. No, I'm saying I'm overthinking it.
You know what? This is pretty cool because I told Will that he was going to get schooled in wrestling, and you've been schooled. So
you boy.
Yeah, man. You know what, Rivers, you're teaching me some stuff. I've been a fan of wrestling since I was just a little kid. Like I'm pushing 40 here, and I've been like in early days of the 1980s and things like that. My dad was a security guard at our local gardens here, and back when WWF used to do house shows and things like that, he would bring me to the wrestling when the WWE or WWF would come here, I have a picture of me sitting in Andre the Giant's hand.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like 3 years old, and I was a tiny little kid, and sitting in the palm of
his hand, yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah, probably smaller than his hand still, yeah.
I was smaller than his hand. I looked like a little Cabbage Patch Kid.
Oh my god!
Oh, yeah.
Like sitting in the palm of Andre the Giant's hand.
I went to a Raw, I think it was, or no, I think maybe it was NXT. Yeah, it was War Games. That's what it was. Me and Dr. Pat went to War Games, the one where Ricochet did the giant, flip off the cage. It was just incredible.
I've seen videos of that.
It was a couple of years ago. It was here in Los Angeles at the Staples Center. We went, and they had next to the merchandise stand, they just had this display, and it was Andre the Giant's handprint. Mm-hmm. Like it was, just you could just kind of walk up and see what the hell his hand. It was. I mean, like it's bigger than you can even imagine. It's ridiculous.
It's very funny that you said that. Like I've sat in that hand, and it was there. He was I don't remember. I was like 3 years old, so I don't really remember.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I have that picture that my dad has framed at his house. And every time I look at it, I'm like, that's really where my love of wrestling started right there. Like my dad would go out and he would go to work, and every Saturday morning he would sit me in front of the TV and I would watch WWF Superstars.
Yeah, sure.
On TV, like, so I saw Hulk Hogan, like back in the early 80s, early 90s, my dad had the Hulk Hogan haircut and mustache.
Oh, the skullet?
Yeah, he had the skullet, and he had the big Hulk Hogan mustache shit. And when he would go to work, Hulk Hogan would show up on my screen, and for years I thought my dad was Hulk Hogan.
Wow, that's awesome.
Because he had the same hair. Would go to work. Yeah, when he had the same thing. So for years, I guess that's where my love of wrestling started, and that's when I had the opportunity to actually step foot into the squared circle, I absolutely jumped at that opportunity.
I just looked up Andre the Giant's like handprint,
mm-hmm.
and I found this wonderful image of him holding like a can of beer.
Yep.
Oh
yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's that famous story, like one day he was like in that hotel bar and he drank like 50, 60 beer and like passed out. They couldn't move him, so they just left him there for the night because obviously he pick up Andre the Giant, so he just passed out on the floor for like.
If Andre the Giant was dead weight, there's not a person on this planet that could pick him up.
No.
Yeah, you need a backhoe or a scooper.
Yeah,
or something. Yeah, you just close up that part of the hotel and you're done.
So Rivers, you seem to be well vested in wrestling. Have you ever personally stepped foot in the ring?
Not in an actual ring, but I'm 33, and like everybody my age, when I was 12 or whatever in 1999, we all had trampolines. I grew up in Alabama. So everybody had a trampoline in the backyard, and so we definitely had a neighborhood wrestling federation,
like a backyard wrestling fed.
Me and all the kids in the neighborhood, we would just get on the trampoline and beat the shit out of each other, and it was fun as hell.
It's like nice. Flying elbows.
Sounds like a good time.
Well, this is a great time. Yeah, well, because in my and this was around the time too, 98. This is right when the famous Hell in a Cell match is happening and ECW is on TV. So the hardcore stuff that was happening at the in the trampoline wrestling league was pretty intense. Tempers got heated occasionally, and people not like permanently hurt, but people got fucked up. Like my friend. A friend of mine hit my other friend with a golf club in the leg, really fucking hard, and his brother, the kid, it was one of those he was one of those little shitty kids. He was like, "I'm calling my brother," and then his brother showed up, and his brother was 16, so he pulls up in a car, and we all ran screaming.
Oh my god!
Like, oh my god, Hayden's here!
That's a really good segue, because the reason why I asked that is because I took my love of wrestling myself personally. If I'm going to tell a little personal story, I took my love of wrestling one step further. I've actually stepped foot in the ring.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you train or you
I
just?
Did. I
that's
did.
Awesome.
I trained for 4 months in Escanaba, Michigan.
Okay.
Under a gentleman by the name of Mike Shaw. You know him better as Bastian Booger.
Oh. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I do know Bastian. That's amazing. Yeah, oh, that's great.
Bastian Booger. Now, Adam, if you look up Bastian Booger, because I'm not going to be able to.
Please look him up.
Look him up and post a picture of him up on here on the Discord. Bastian Booger. He had this house in Escanaba, Michigan, and I would go every Friday night after school. This was back. Oh my goodness. End of 2000, beginning of 2001, right? So, beginning of 2000, mid 2001. And, Bastian Booger. That's him right there, man. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. That's Mike Shaw. Oh, man, I'm going to tell you a story. Oh, my goodness. So we would go to his house, and he had this big garage in his back. And inside that garage was just like desks and empty beer cases and the ring set up in the corner. Okay, we really couldn't bounce back and forth on the ropes too much because the ring was definitely sat right in the corner. We only had like 2 corners that we could bounce off the ropes, and
they were like this, so you couldn't. You couldn't run the ropes really.
Couldn't run the ropes very well, but the ring was there. It was nice and solid. It was great. He didn't do a lot of teaching. Only thing I remember from him is a couple of things. He would always sit in the corner and just eat buckets of chicken. Oh my God.
I swear to God, I thought you were about to say boogers.
No.
Could you imagine? Buckets of boogers.
I wouldn't doubt it. He was a nice guy. Mike Shaw was a great man. He really was.
I know. I'm sure. Yeah.
He was a fantastic. I'll never put him down ever. But all I remember is him eating buckets of chicken. Like KFC, like he would have stacks of KFC, and my pardon?
As you do,
yeah, as you do. My very first night, like I said, I would go there Friday night after school, and I would spend the night in Escanaba, Michigan, and then I would come back Saturday afternoon to Saturday evening, and we would just train. That's what we would do. The very first night I was there, we had to do an initiation, right? As a greenhorn, as a brand new guy, I had to do an initiation. So he would set us in the corner of the ring, and everybody in the room had to give all the greenhorns 2 chest slaps. Okay?
Fuck.
2 chest slaps in the corner as hard as you could. Room. And the last person to give you chest slaps. Now there was three. There was 3. Me and 2 other people were first time training. So we would all sit in the room. We all sit in the corner, and I went last. So and I didn't want to go last because I would have to watch everyone else happen, and I'd be like, I just didn't want that to happen. So 2 hard chest slaps. So we stood in the corner. He made us put our hands cup our arms around the top rope so we wouldn't fall down, right? So everybody would give us 2 hard chest slaps, and he was the last one to give us the chest slap. So our chest was all full of welts and bloodied and bleeding.
And now here comes the chicken grease.
And then here comes the chicken grease, exactly. Bastian Booger. He would turn on Bastian Booger. Mike Shaw, outside the ring, he was a nice guy. Inside the ring, you don't want to fuck with that man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So he would step through the ropes and he would turn Bastian Booger on. You would see Mike Shaw go away. And Bastian Booger would turn on. And he gave you 2 hard chest slaps. And to this day, Mike Shaw has passed away now. He's passed away a long time ago. Yeah. But to this day, every time I watch wrestling and I see someone get a chest slap, I just wince and my chest hurts.
It's like a sense memory.
I have
that man could probably kill me with his pinky.
I had scars on my chest for years, and they're all faded now, but scars on my chest for years. And my very first match, was, and this is going to be might be a sore spot, I don't know, but my first match was 2 days after September 11th.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
great time to be entertaining people.
Yeah, 2 days after September 11th. How I got into the United States, I have no idea. We live in a city called Sault Ste. Marie. Okay, there's Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan.
Way north.
Yeah, way north. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Okay, so
I should
live
also
in Sault Ste. Marie.
mention that Michigan does Sioux like SOO, and we do
no.
Well, if they're saying the Sioux,
yeah,
they're more likely to do SOO, and we do.
So there's two cities: Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Okay, so my first match was in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, at the Armories, 2 days after September 11th. Okay, and I was the only Canadian in the all-American company. The company was called Superior Wrestling Alliance.
Uh-huh.
And my name was, the very creative Justin Sane.
Okay.
Creative, right? So I came out. We all did our memorial to the victims of 9/11, and I was supposed to be the heel. So I came out and dressed in all black, and my thing was hardcore, right? It was at the time when the hardcore belt could be contested 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then.
Oh, yeah.
So we all came out, and I had my chair in my hand, and the hometown guy, his name was Buckshot. He was in the ring, and his name was Buckshot. He was in the ring, and he was doing, we feel for the families and victims of September 11th, 9/11. And so we all did a moment of silence. So we did a moment of silence, and we all participated in that. And then right at the very end, they played the Star Spangled Banner. Okay. And then right at the end of the Star Spangled Banner, Buckshot went up on the top rope and he held his belt high. Like he was the hardcore champion. He was the hometown hero. So he held his belt high. And as everyone was traveling back to the locker room to start the show, I came flying out of the back, went through the bottom ropes, cracked him over the head with the chair, threw the chair on the ground, double underhook DDT him right then and there on the chair, rolled him over, pinned him for the hardcore title, and the Star Spangled Banner was still playing.
Hell yeah.
And immediate heel.
Yeah, of course.
Immediate heel.
Of course. That's outstanding.
And like without question, I had beer thrown on me. I had death threats and the whole 9 yards.
Jesus.
And we main evented that night. Me and him. Obviously, he got his belt back because he's the hometown hero.
Yeah,
but we oh man, we went at each other like you wouldn't believe. Oh my god. Anything that wasn't tied down, we hit each other with.
Yeah.
Like after the fact, did you guys like shake hands? Like, hey, good times out there.
No, not in the ring, because back then.
No, like after the fact.
After the fact, after I gained my bearings back after the whooping that we both got to each other. We were friends after that.
Yeah, traditionally, after, at least from because I've not gotten, I've not actually gotten physically involved in anything yet. Assuming wrestling comes back at some point.
It'll come back.
And we get to do shows again. I talk a lot of shit. I am sort of the, not comparing myself in any way, but I am the sort of Bobby Heenan, dickhead announcer at Brian Kendrick's Wrestling Pro Wrestling, which is
that's awesome.
Man, we have such a good time. Like because I've been doing comedy now that I'm coming up on my 9th year of doing stand-up comedy, and nice. I have had such a I don't want to shit on like comics necessarily, but wrestlers are just like so much more chill. It's like it's a very similar kind of vibe, but because stand-up is such a sort of lone wolf pursuit, everybody in LA, especially stand-up, a lot of people are just kind of like psychotic narcissists. But with wrestling, you can't be that because you are in charge of someone else's health when you're in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
They have to trust each other so implicitly. So there is, there's some amount of ego that comes with, any sort of performing art or anything like that. But with wrestling, it's like you kind of can't be a huge dickhead, because if people don't want to work with you, then what are you going to do? You can't wrestle, you can't actually wrestle a broom. That's what they always said. Ric Flair could wrestle a broom and make it a great match, but you can't really do that. So
Perry Saturn brought a mop to the ring for years. So
that's right. And Chavo Guerrero had Pepe, the stick horse, and But yeah, man, my experience dealing with all that and the Wrestling Pro Wrestling, I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, but it's very it was started by Brian Kendrick, obviously, who's former tag team champion of WWE, former cruiserweight champion, and
obviously
genuinely one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he is also a maniac as far as like his brain, where just the things that he thinks of, because he writes most of the stuff himself. And then they build these crazy costumes, because Brian is very much like I am. Like he's obsessed with the stories, and specifically with just like the weird things in wrestling. Like Brian Kendrick, and it's funny because he's known as he's a cruiserweight, and he's known for being very kinetic in the ring, and he's a high flyer, and he's a smaller guy, but he can bounce around and all that good stuff and put on a hell of a match. But his favorite wrestler of all time is Coco Beware.
Ooh, Birdman.
Right, because he had a fucking bird and he was insane. And so
Birdman.
And Brian was like legit like moved to tears when Coco got in the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. Like he loves Coco, and that tells you everything you need to know, because we have all of these amazing Southern California is just a hotbed of amazing indie wrestling. So there's all these people that want to work there because Brian is very well respected. He's a trainer. He trained Ronda Rousey. He was one of her trainers when she got into the wrestling biz and stuff like that. So
I didn't know that.
He's a very well respected. Yeah, he would come from training Ronda Rousey, like the most famous fighter in the world, and then he would come to the garage and just build a bunch of crazy costumes and talk shop and drink beers with me and the two other idiots that worked there. And it was great. But they build these costumes, these elaborate costumes. So, we have like King Giraffadora, which is very similar to King Ghidorah from Godzilla, except his necks are all giraffes. So a guy comes out in a costume where he's got his arms up like this, and he's got a giant giraffe head, and it's this like unstoppable monster. And then he'll be fighting somebody like Eric Watts or Darwin Finch or, one of these like actually very talented, kind of local wrestlers. And people just like working there because they like the vibe, and it's because it's a comedy, it's a comedy show, but it's also a wrestling show.
I like the vibe, and you're just describing it. I kind of want to.
Hey, we got all our shows are on all of our shows are on youtube.com/wrestling pro wrestling.
I know,
watch
Adam,
everything.
Adam posted it up on the
okay.
Discord here.
Yeah, so if you look through, I mean, it's so fun. Like those live shows, because it's LA, so people are here kind of demand a different sort of entertainment. Like they don't necessarily, the same shit that would fly in a town like where I came from, as far as comedy or whatever, is seen as a little dull here for whatever reason, just because there's just so much live entertainment. So the show has turned into this like really fun environment, or at least when it was still running. Hopefully we'll get back there at some point, but
you'll get there.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it's been fun. But anyway, all of that is to say, I do commentary for it, and when we were first approached to do it, it was just because of the podcast, because they heard me and Pat talking about wrestling on the show. And somebody sent it to Brian because he specifically wanted comedians to be the commentary team, because there's so much of it is like very, kind of funny. And when he approached Pat and I to do that, he kind of explained what the idea of the show was going to be, where it's like, all right, we're going to have all these crazy characters, and, the whole thing is meant to be just kind of, insane. And I told him, I was like, hey, take this idea or not, but honestly, I think it's going to be funnier if we just play it very, very straight in terms of commentary. because when Brian was pitching it, he was like, yeah, it's going to be really silly. So if y'all want to like make fun of the characters or whatever, just how, I trust you, as comedians, play it however you want. And I was like, dude, it's going to be so much funnier. Because we have a character, for instance, named Chow Mein Charlie. And Chow Mein Charlie is an anthropomorphic box of Chinese food.
Yeah.
Like classic white folding carton with the pagoda, the red pagoda, and then on the front it says General So-So. And he's just this gigantic, it's you can't see out of the thing. It's just a huge box of Chinese food. And, Brian was like, oh yeah, feel free to make fun of it. I'm like, dude, it's so much funnier to actually analyze how you would fight a giant box of noodles. So when he comes out, we're all just like, here he is from down the street, from the strip mall. This is Chow Mein Charlie. Now, Dr. Pat, when you're looking at you're staring down an opponent like Chow Mein Charlie, you got to understand he has a very high center of gravity. All right, so you're going to want to work those legs to bring that box of noodles down, like that kind of thing. And to me, that's so much funnier than being like, look at this stupid thing. It's way funnier to just be like taking it very, very seriously. And the last character that they introduced right before we had to kind of go on pause because of the Corona thing, and it was so funny. You can actually watch the video where I don't even do commentary because I'm literally just like, and buried my face in my hand laughing so hard. Was they have a character, and this would be for Will if you're not familiar. There was a wrestler in the UK back in like the 60s, like an old school wrestler. And he was named Giant Haystacks, and he was this British guy. And Giant Haystacks was, what would y'all say, like 500 pounds, 600 pounds, just this like huge blob, like a massive man, right?
He would just wear overalls.
Yeah, he would just have overalls and he would just sit on you. Like, he's just, like, massive, right? So one of the characters that we introduced right at the end there was we had a character named Giant Haystack. And it was literally just a bale of hay with a face and overalls. And when he came out, he had a bunch of guys run out with, like, pots and pans. And one guy had a banjo. So it was just a giant bale of hay. That somebody had to fight, So we have stuff like that, and then we also have just incredible actual indie wrestling. So it's like we're gonna reel in the wrestling fans with like the good wrestling, and then we're gonna reel in the comedy fans with the funny stuff, and then hopefully get everybody into it. And so
that really, really sounds like an amazing thing. I had no idea pro wrestling. I think I'm gonna, I have nothing to do today after the podcast is over. So, cause I have a guest coming tomorrow and I really don't feel like cleaning. So I think I'm just going to, just sit and binge watch, now this pro wrestling thing. Cause that sounds, fun. And if I had to wait to Los Angeles, I would totally go see the show.
Dude, get this. I mean, I forgot who said who was keeping up with the current product and stuff like this, but we have now had so many, because Brian still wrestles for WWE. He's still there, and it's funny because this is what I always tell people about wrestling pro wrestling. I'm like, here's how kind of weird it is. It's so weird that Vince McMahon was not threatened by it in any way. When Brian came to him, and he's working for him, and Vince, he would not do this. Like if any other employee came to him and was like, "Hey, I've got my own, thing on the side," Vince would not deal with that. But because Brian explained it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, we have the Fromage Horsemen, who are the four horsemen, but their heads are made of cheese." Vince was like, "I don't give a shit, whatever." So
that sounds like Vince.
That's what I always tell people. I'm like, this was so.
I forget about that, man.
Yeah, the Fromage Horsemen are Ricotta Flair, Gorgonzola Anderson, Parm Anderson, and of course Tully Blanchett.
Wow!
Man, that sounds like a Gouda time.
That's my job, right? Is I just get to sit there and just do cheese puns for like 20 minutes.
It's fucking cheesy though.
Yeah, he's the culture boy. He's the cheesiest player in the game.
That's hilarious.
I must watch this now.
I'm telling you, man, we have a good ass time. And what I was saying is, so all of the WWE people, because Brian is like, everybody loves him, they all know about this and they come to the shows. So I've had Becky Lynch. I already just adore her just as a competitor. she sat in the front row at our Halloween show, which is called Beefy Brawlers and Creepy Crawlers. She sat in the front row of our Halloween show and was going apeshit for 3 hours. Like the whole time she was like booing the heels, cheering the faces, losing her mind. And like, I already, just respect the hell out of her as a performer and as a wrestler. And I'm just like kind of out of my side eye, just like watching, and I'm like, damn, Becky Lynch is cool as fuck. She loves it. All the New Day guys have come. Xavier Woods he flies himself to LA for every show. And Kofi, man, when he was the champ, I got a picture with Kofi Kingston. He came to the show and was just like, dude, this was the best show I've ever seen. So
you need to bring that up to Canada. When you can.
I want to. Or hey, y'all come here, and I don't know if you're still. You mentioned you were trained. I don't know if you're still working, but
no, I haven't stepped foot in the ring in a little while, man. I would love to now that I've gotten myself back into shape. I let myself go for quite a while. I was like 600 pounds. I looked like that guy on the screen there. It was huge. But now I got myself back into shape. I would love to get myself back into the ring.
Evan hasn't actually done any wrestling since the incident.
Hey, guess what? If you're wearing one of the big costumes, if you're the turkey, you don't have to. You could just be a giant turkey.
Now, before I watch this, are you wrestling in the costume?
Oh yeah. So are y'all familiar with the band Guar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Derek Smith, who wrestles as Cereal Man, who is essentially Hulk Hogan, but his head is a giant box of cereal. So Cereal Man grew up, I think he's from North Carolina, but he spent time in Richmond, and he's buddies with Techno Destructo from Guar, who showed him how to build all these costumes out of foam rubber. So, Guar, if people are listening and don't know, is this metal band that dresses as monsters from space, essentially. And so that's how he builds all the costumes. But the extra step is like Guar has to like play guitar and drum and, perform in these things. It's a whole nother thing to like actually have to fight in them, So him and Ben Tranum, who's the producer who does all the technical stuff as well, they build all the costumes with Brian, and they just come up with all this stuff. So, anyway, they fight in the costumes. So, like, my favorite, so I mentioned Cereal Man. His, the Robin to his Batman is Pop-Tart Boy. So, Cereal Man, they are the champions of breakfast. And when they come to the ring, Pop-Tart Boy, I mean, if you look him up, he's in a Pop-Tart suit. A huge Pop-Tart suit. And of course, he can't get in between the ropes, he has to go over the top. And so it legitimately takes him like 5 or 6 minutes to get into the ring.
I just looked up Pop-Tart Boy, and I'm very confused at what I'm seeing. I found none of what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll find you a picture, but yeah, it takes them a long ass time to get into the ring. Is the point, and that in and of itself is sort of a comedy bit, right?
When you said Cereal Man was like a ripoff of Hulk Hogan, that reminds me, I had 2 wrestling personas, right?
Huh?
So I had 2 wrestling personas, and you said Hulk Hogan, and it brought back my second wrestling persona, which was the real Canadian Mike McKenzie, which a ripoff of Hulk Hogan.
There's
Cereal Man. There you go. Cereal Man and Pop-Tart Boy.
That's Cereal Man and Pop-Tart Boy. Yeah. So it's a real. Oh, and then there's the Fromage. There's the Fromage Horseman.
Oh my lord!
Oh man,
that is incredible.
Man.
It's a good ass time. But anyway, I said all of that for the last 15 minutes to just say I have not been in the ring. I do. I think what was weird is that when I moved,
you need to try it. You need to.
Oh yeah. Well, when I moved to LA, right, one of the things that I figured out pretty quickly is that almost every stand-up, at least every male stand-up comedian in LA was at one point or is currently like a wrestling fan. Like it's just this weird through line that runs through. And I think deep down, a lot of us, it's, it would be great to sell out Madison Square Garden like Kevin Hart, and do a huge comedy show at Madison Square Garden. But I would be just as happy to be thrown through a table by like The Undertaker or something. Like, I would take just being destroyed as a manager or something, be a Paul Heyman type.
I love that. I love the die to get like an elbow from like Superfly.
Oh
yeah. I specifically want to be thrown through a table. There's just something about it just seems awesome.
My only claim to fame in that round was my very last professional wrestling match in 2004 before I went to school, before I actually met Adam in college. Was a loser leaves wrestling match 3-way between me and Buckshot and Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Hold on. That's awesome. I love Hacksaw. Real quick, I love that you're the only person in history who actually left wrestling after a loser leaves town.
Yeah, I know. A loser leaves wrestling match. And the big thing about that was the ring broke.
Oh shit!
Yeah, the top rope busted. Like,
damn,
the turnbuckle busted.
No.
So that was the only thing that it would happen right after our match. Like, we had the match, and I guess the next match came in, and they bounced off the top rope, and the top turnbuckle busted. But yeah, so that's my only claim to fame, and I can tell you right now that 2x4 that a hacksaw carries around is a real piece of wood.
Oh yeah, hell yeah!
No.
I know that for a fact because I got that across the top of my back. So I've had many things happen. Like another story. I was saying earlier, my second persona in wrestling was the real Canadian Mike McKenzie. So I would come out to a hacked version of Hulk Hogan's song "Real American." Every time they said the word American, I dubbed my own voice that says Canadian.
Oh, nice.
So it would just say Canadian every time I said American, and I would come out wearing the typical, what you would think like a stereotypical Canadian guy would wear. I would come out in jean shorts, like jorts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd come out with a plaid shirt on, with a toque, with a wool hat, and I'd have a little beaver, a little beaver. And then to Hulk Hogan, the whole thing, underneath my plaid shirt, I would have another shirt with printed muscles on it. So like a picture of a muscle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I would rip my plaid shirt open and it would be muscles underneath, right? So that would be like my whole Hulk Hogan thing. And one of my last matches before, my last match I did it as Just Insane, but this match I did it as the real Canadian Mike McKenzie. My mom and my aunt and my cousin came across the river to see me wrestle one time.
Oh, okay.
And they knew they were there. Like Buckshot knew that they were there. And so earlier in the day, we planned the spot. Okay. Like for Will, a spot is something big, like a big thing. Like someone goes through a table or someone, jumps off a cage or something like that. That's called a spot. Right. And sometimes they rehearse and sometimes they don't. But earlier that day we rehearsed. Okay. And so they kicked the shit out of me, of course, because I was always the guy that got his ass whooped. And earlier that day we practiced it and it went fine. What had happened is that they beat the shit out of me and then they put me on the top rope. Then someone else on the ground set up 2 tables, one with the legs out and sitting on the ground, and the other table was sitting on top of it flat.
Okay.
The spot is that I was supposed to get power bombed from the top rope through the 2 tables in front of my mom.
Oh no.
Okay. We had practiced it earlier. He bought like 10 tables, right? So we had practiced it earlier and it was fine.
I don't like where this is going. I'm frightened.
Well, So we did it, and for some strange reason, they thought it would be funny to actually really wind me. I was winded like you wouldn't believe.
He was gassed.
Yeah, that was the word I was trying to think of. I couldn't remember that word. I was gassed like you wouldn't believe, and I forgot a part of the whole thing. Because when you take a power bomb, you're supposed to take it off the top of your shoulders and then slap the mat with your hands in order to to take the energy away from your upper body. And so I kind of forgot that. So I took a power bomb twisted. So I took it twisted, and I herniated 2 discs in my spine when I went through the 2 tables.
Oh,
and
no.
My mom told me afterwards, because I don't remember this. Because I got a concussion as well.
Does that surprise anyone?
That doesn't surprise you. My mom told me that when I went through the tables literally exploded. Like into pieces, like exploded. My cousin took a piece of the table, which I have to get back from him to this day. I keep asking him, but he took a piece of the table and he has it at his house. But yeah, so that was the big spot that I took in my life was that one.
God,
and
crazy.
Yeah, it was really weird. And so yeah, that's my wrestling story. My claim to fame was I fought Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh, my Hacksaw thing, by the way. He I don't know if he still does, but at one point he lived in the same hometown as a friend of mine in Florida. And he was telling me that, like, when he goes home for Christmas, that he'll go to this bar, and Hacksaw is just hanging out at this bar, and usually we'll just at some point yell out, "All right, who wants to get Hacksaw high?"
Oh my God.
And then he's like, "Yeah, so I smoked weed with Hacksaw out behind a dumpster behind this shitty bar in Florida a bunch."
Hacksaw, great man, absolutely wonderful man. Covered himself in baby oil all the fucking time.
Yeah, of course.
All the time.
Dude, have you been high? Have you ever covered yourself in baby oil on weed?
No. Can't say that I have. Can't say that I have, but
on weed.
Weed, yeah. So Will, this is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So this is Hacksaw.
He kind of looks like the lion from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I was trying to figure out what he reminded me of. Actually, damn,
that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Like
so
that's
Florida
version of the lion.
Yeah, that was
Bert Lahr, the great Bert Lahr.
Yeah, from Wizard of Oz. Okay, so we're gonna take a pause from wrestling right now. We're gonna take a pause from wrestling. I don't know. I think I forgot to tell Will that we're gonna do this. We're gonna do your segment right now, Will.
You completely forgot to tell me about any of this. I need to pull that up now.
Okay, so while you're doing that, Will has a little segment that because we have a guest on, because we have Adam here, we're going to do a little bit just to see what their opinions are. We have there's Hacksaw and Andre the Giant right there.
Oh my God!
So it's called "What are your thoughts on?" Okay, so we give you a topic. Okay, and we're gonna talk about what your opinions are on both sides, whether you like it. Like, for example, PlayStation versus Xbox, right? Or
there's like the classic console wars, Nintendo.
Like
Sega.
Coke versus Pepsi, things like that,
stuff like that.
So we're gonna take a small break, just a small break from wrestling, if that's okay. Rivers, is that cool with you?
Yeah.
All right. So do you have a topic there, Mr. Will?
You know what? I do.
Okay.
I do actually. I do have a topic right here. So this one was actually sent in by Dingo.
Okay.
He has sent in a lot of stuff in the past and a lot of our listener submitted stuff.
Okay.
And he wants us.
Before we do that, though, I just have one question.
Mm-hmm.
What's up?
Did Dingo eat the baby?
Dingo did not eat the baby.
How do we know? Did we ask him?
Go ahead. Sorry, stupid question. Go ahead.
See, do you get that reference?
I know Dingo personally.
That's right. That show is probably older than he is.
I don't get the reference.
Meryl Streep lost a child. Yeah, she got her baby eaten by a dingo.
And side note, I literally have a T-shirt that's older than you are. So yeah, I was wearing it the other day. Yeah.
2001. Goddamn, yeah.
No, that's the 2000.
Okay, so
he's going on 20. So what's your topic, man?
Yeah, so this one is sent in by Dingo, and he asks, food on a stick or food on a plate?
Give it. noble stick.
So Rivers, what's your opinion? Food on a stick or food on a plate?
It depends on if people can see you or not. It depends on if you're in public. Because I can tell you a very brief stand-up related story about food on a stick.
Please do.
My first ever first ever festival that I got into as a comedian was in 2012 in Birmingham, Alabama. They have a music festival called Secret Stages, where they had all the venues around, this kind of downtown area of Birmingham, Alabama, were all set up, and they had music and they had comedy. So I was booked on that, and I was Friday night. The show we did Friday night was awful. Like, everybody, the bar was shaped like an L, and so so we're performing here, and then there's this whole bar around the corner packed out with people who are just talking. They don't even know that there's a show happening right here. They're all just running their mouths, and so the sound is just coming around the corner, drowning out. You can't get a rhythm. You can't hear the laughs. It's just bad. I bombed. I died on my ass. The jokes didn't work. It sucked. And so I did my time, and then the next person went up, and I just went outside. So it's a festival. So they've got little carts selling, hot dogs and cotton candy and all that kind of stuff. And I'm walking, and I just feel like shit. I'm like, man, I should quit. That sucked. I'm bad at this. Just feeling awful. And then I see a light up ahead, and the light is a giant glowing sign that says, fried chicken on a stick.
Oh my God.
And they were selling, I swear to God, they were like 2 feet long. These gigantic sticks that they dip in the fryer, and they're wrapped around just like, chicken, right? So it's this huge fried chicken stick. And I was hungry, and I felt like a failure. So I was like, all right, well, I've earned this. And so I get the fried chicken on a stick, and now I just have this cartoonishly, like, long fried thing. And I got kind of lost, and I somehow doubled back, and I ended up, like, coming around the corner, and I was back in front of the venue where I had just died on stage. And now the show is over, and the entire crowd is in front of the venue, and now I suddenly am just standing there with the physical manifestation of my own failure, just like fat, dumb, and now I just see everyone who just saw me and was just like, this guy sucks, and now I'm just like, So my answer to your question... Right. So the answer to the question is, if there is a level of privacy assumed, go for broke. On the stick, on the plate, doesn't matter. If no one can see you, baby, do whatever you like. If you're in public, you gotta go with plate. Plate is the only dignified way to go, I think.
That's a great story.
Oh,
that's a great story.
That's true. It's a true thing.
That's a great story.
In fact, I think I have I'm going to find I think I have a selfie that I took because as it was happening to me, I was actively just been like, oh, this is awful, but it's pretty funny. I feel bad now, but this is pretty funny.
It looks hilarious to somebody else right now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait to see this.
Kevin.
Oh man. Yes, my opinion.
Stick. Let's hear it.
Plate or stick. Again, that's all depending upon. Oh my God! Look at the size of that thing.
Oh my Lord!
Look at the size of that thing. I know we can't see the video. You're gonna have to send those pictures to Adam.
I'll text them to you right now.
Yeah. Send all the pictures you showed us. Send them to Adam.
Okay.
And then he'll plop it all over our social media if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, but for my opinion, again, just like River said, it all depends upon the situation at the time, right? Like if I'm at a country fair or a county fair or a fair of some kind, you can't be walking around with a plate. You know what I mean? Like everything's got to be like on a stick, right? Like
if everyone's doing it, sure.
Yeah. It has to be on a stick because you can't ride a ride at a fair or something or play a game while holding a plate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's true.
Plus corn dog.
Exactly.
Obviously,
corn
just
dog
one
is
of the best
classic food on a stick.
That's
just
right.
one of the you get the corn dog and the mustard and
yeah,
great.
You can't get any better than that.
No.
But again, if you're the privacy of your home and things like that, you can get all sloppy with the stick all you want. But I don't know. So I guess in my opinion, because I'm a weird kind of guy, if I have to eat on a plate, I will if it's there. But if I had to choose, it would be a stick.
Yeah, I like a bucket. I like a good bucket.
The bucket's pretty good.
I can't look at a bucket without thinking of Mike Shaw. I seriously can't.
Yeah.
Okay, what about a bucket on a stick?
I can't look at a bucket of chicken without thinking of Mike. And my chest hurts every time, and it's not because I ate buckets of chicken and I'm going to have a heart attack, but it's the whole Ugh. So what about you, Adam?
Well, as a whole, there's not really that many stick-related foods, really, so I'm going to go with plate.
All right.
Plate works. What about you?
No, I guess if you want to go the not fun way.
Yeah, I'm going plate.
I'm all for the stick, personally. If I could get a hard shell taco on a stick, I 100% would do that any day of the week. I don't care where I am. I don't care if I'm out at like a wedding, at like some fancy event. I will pull out just a taco on a stick and start eating.
Is that a real thing? A taco on a stick?
If it's not, it should be.
Because I was trying to think of
that'd be one of the hardest things to put on a stick, I would think.
No, I've already got it. Because as soon as you said it, I was like, Jesus, that's brilliant, and I've already got it. Y'all, you know, like the taquitos, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it would just be a long taquito wrapped around and then fried. So it wouldn't be. You wouldn't have the lettuce necessarily, but you would definitely have the taco meat and the shell. And then, you know, if they gave you like some kind of like avocado dip or, you know, something. Oh, buddy.
We're doing
that. Okay, I just Googled taco on a stick.
Cheese or whatever, get that as a dip and just have that instead.
All right, Rivers, if you make that, you need to show us. You need to take a picture and you need to show it.
I don't know. Well, I don't even need to make it. I can just tell you I can tell you exactly how I would roll. Because I don't, you know, tacos are one of those things, especially like living here in Los Angeles. It's like I could make them, or I could just go to the best, you know, place ever, and it's, you know, they park a taco truck in the gas station next to my house. That is some of the best Mexican food I've ever had. So the impetus to actually learn to cook like that for me is a bit declined, just because it's always so convenient, close, and cheap.
One door away.
But there's a spot in LA called Cielito Lindo that claims to have originated the taquito in 1934. They claim to be the originator of the fried taco, and you can still get them, and they come with this really delicious avocado sauce. So all I would do is I would just bring some shish kebabs and then just stick them in the end of the taquito. So that way I wouldn't even have to make it.
I googled taco on a stick. Apparently someone already made this joke on a TV show, and I didn't know about it.
Oh well, you know, have you ever heard of a walking taco?
I've never heard of a walking taco.
Yeah, look up walking taco, because that is, I believe that's a Texas thing. My co-host on my podcast, Sam Harder, is from Austin, Texas, and and I think it's like a Midwestern, you know, that like middle part of the country thing. But it's essentially a bag of tortilla chips that they just pour taco shit into, and you just shake it up and eat it as you walk.
Why don't we do this?
That works.
And then put that on a stick.
Yeah.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are making me hungry here. I know.
Hungry.
You're gonna have to eat now.
Okay, so we're gonna circle back from tacos. Now that was what's your opinion on?
What are your thoughts on?
What are your thoughts on whatever we start naming it? We're gonna circle back into wrestling because we're almost out of time here.
Okay.
So Will.
Yo.
All this talk about wrestling, my stories, River's stories. What are your thoughts based on what you heard over the last little while?
Well, it kind of, okay.
Be honest.
To me, it sounds like a more testosterone filled soap opera.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
I'm done with that.
Yeah, testosterone-filled soap opera. That's pretty much it. Because we were talking earlier, like you said wrestling was fake, right?
Well,
now,
no, okay, you're warping my words.
No, not all of it. I didn't know. Hold on, you didn't let me finish. I'm going to agree with you, but as you said, not all of wrestling is fake, but there are fake parts about it, right? Just as my medical bills can show you,
you know what? I believe it.
Wrestling is about 90% real and about 10% fake. That's probably what I would have to say, because you actually have to be pretty athletic, somewhat, even a little bit, to step into that ring and do what they do.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that, but I would also come back and say that nothing in entertainment is real. So why are you holding this to that precedent? It's like me coming in here. It's like me coming in here and being like, "Why do you watch Breaking Bad? That's fake. Why do you watch The Sopranos? That's fake."
That's
right.
That's
right.
That's what
Simpsons is fake.
Yeah,
Are you telling me that Red Dead Redemption 2 wasn't an actual real life thing that you can act out?
Quarries and really monsters. What the fuck?
Yeah,
mind blown, man. Mind blown.
Everything good is fake.
Exactly. I counter that all the time when people tell me, "Oh, wrestling's fake." I'm like, okay, yeah, but yeah, so is movies and TVs and movies,
what's your favorite
shows
thing? It's
exactly. It's likely fake.
Yeah,
but that's that's that thing. So have we changed your mind about wrestling at all?
I'm sure we've not.
Well, okay. Well, here's the thing. I didn't say it was fake to that extent. Like, I did say, like, some of the stuff I was looking at did look fake, and maybe it was the way the camera angles were on that one video I watched for 40 minutes. But some of the hits didn't look like they actually made contact, and that was what I was really getting at with that.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
well, I was gonna say, you watch like Superstars from the '80s, though. I would say if you're gonna just start diving in, then I would say, especially for modern stuff, go watch from 2015 Sasha Banks versus Bayley at in NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, just to see what the modern style looks like, and just a perfect, like, you don't have to know anything, because Sasha Banks comes out and she's driven to the ring in a limo and like has all these big guys in suits kind of like lift her up to the ring, so you're like, okay, she's an asshole, and then Bayley,
right?
Yeah, and then Bayley has like a ponytail sticking out of her head, so it's like pretty obvious. You're like, okay, so she's like, she's the good guy. You don't have to,
the asshole.
Yeah, the point is, you don't have to know anything going in. You just watch this, and that'll give you I'd say a better appreciation for what it is now versus the stuff from the '80s, because that is, that is when the thing was as popular as it ever was, but except for maybe the late '90s, but. If you're watching Superstars, you're watching TV wrestling as opposed to something like a pay-per-view, like a WrestleMania, a Royal Rumble, things like that. And with the TV wrestling, it tended to be a lot of, and I love watching that old stuff, because you get to see those jobbers, and you get to see all the weird, just like the weird minutia of it, which is what I'm interested in. But if you want like a real, what's that?
Yeah, the Yeti.
Yeah, oh my god! Well, the Yeti was a pay-per-view.
Oh,
that's Halloween Havoc '95, man.
Oh, that's right.
That's also the monster truck sumo match between the Big Show and Hogan, and Hulk Hogan murders a man, and then for no reason he's just back at the end of the night. You're like, wait, you killed him though. You threw him off the building. But
I guess.
But what I'm saying is, if you're gonna really try to get an appreciation for what a beautiful art form it is, I would say, man, check out some of the newer stuff, because it is 100% still go. Not only is it still going, I would say, it's the people who are involved in it now. It is such a high level of athleticism and entertainment. I mean, watch a Ricochet match. Watch that damn War Games I was talking about from LA from a few years ago. Like, There's some really incredible stuff happening.
There's a wrestler there that my buddy Alex was showing me today at work. Like, he showed me pictures and videos of this guy before, and I forget his name, but I can guarantee you, Rivers, you'll know him. The dude that wrestles with his hands in his pocket.
Oh, Orange Cassidy. Yes.
Orange Cassidy. Okay.
Holy shit. Yeah.
So, Will, you need to watch Orange Cassidy.
Oh my God. Yes.
Okay.
Orange Cassidy is.
I think you would absolutely love Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, he's probably your age.
So the dude, just to put it, he literally wrestles with his hands in his pocket.
Yeah, the whole gimmick is that he's kind of too cool to be there, and he's so unthreatened by everything, and the only time he ever takes his hands out of his pockets is if you like really,
when he tries.
get him going. Yeah, it's literally him trying. Like he's like,
yeah.
I'm so good at this, I don't have to try. So he just has his hands in his pockets and he does these little kicks just to piss people off. Unbelievable. And it's one of those things where, like, especially a lot of the old school wrestling people like hate this guy because it kind of, destroys the kayfabe of this being an actual physical contest. But I think the story he's telling stands to reason perfectly. It's like, yeah, it's like a psych out thing. It's Muhammad Ali doing rope-a-dope. It's like, all right, let him get you on the ropes. Let him think, gain too much confidence. Pride goeth before the fall, as the good books tells us. And then this guy will whip your ass without even trying. Like, all of it, the psychology of Orange Cassidy holds up to me, but also he's undeniable in terms of the way the crowd reacts. If you go back and watch when they still had a crowd, my God, people go ape shit just when he just stands there with his sunglasses on, and you're like, that guy's a star, man. So it's, it might be the comedian thing in me of like, the crowd is this is, I believe Lenny Bruce said, you could be in front of an audience and every individual person in that audience could be an idiot, but together they're a genius. And if people are going that nuts for this guy, then they're right. So yeah, I love Orange Cassidy. So
that's one that you need to watch, Will.
Yeah, there's a lot of good shit. I mean, the 80s, honestly, I as much as I hate to say it, because it is like the sort of idea of wrestling is the mid 80s stuff. It is it's hard to it's like watching an old black and white movie or something. Like, you kind of have to be well versed in the language of film to really appreciate, like, On the Waterfront or some shit. You know what I mean? You have to understand the context of what it means. But there's way more kind of fast-paced, stuff that you can watch from the last 5 years that'll give you a real appreciation for that stuff. And once you build that base of kind of enjoying the modern product, then you can go back and watch the older stuff and be, kind of thoroughly entertained by it. Because obviously that's everybody's inspiration, is Macho Man and Hulk Hogan and, that kind of stuff. Ric Flair. But if you watch it now without context, it is a little bit, kind of archaic or whatever. It's hard to watch. So, I mean, I'd say go back and check out some, some Attitude Era stuff. Maybe would be more like
Degeneration X.
Stone Cold's the easy one, because because DX, like a lot of, the Attitude Era is the one that everybody still holds up. In WWE, this is their fault 100%, because they still want you to think that it's 1998, because they won't stop, bringing these guys back, even though they're 20 years past their prime and everything like that. The Attitude Era is very vaunted, and that is when I grew up. The first wrestling I ever watched, because I mentioned, my mom, when she found out I was watching it, was mortified. Because she is, she's from Alabama, but she is from an educated, she's one of the educated Southerners, and wrestling is just low aught. She just hates it, and so she was horrified that I loved it so much. So, but that is, 97, 98, that's when I started watching. And that is still held up as this golden time period. But if you go back and watch it now, there's so much just crap in it. There is gold. The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, all the stuff that you hear about is golden from that time period. But man, there's a lot of bullshit. And,
oh boy.
And DX, as much as I like them kind of individually, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, if you go back and watch that stuff, you're like, God, it's so stupid.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
But Austin, man, that's what I would say to you, Will. Go back, just go on YouTube and just type in best of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because his stuff, it's very easy to understand. Because everybody, I assume, has worked for a living. And at some point, you've been like, fuck my boss. I hate that guy. I want to beat the shit out of him. And that's all Austin is every week he would show up and he would beat up Vince McMahon and people would lose their minds. And he would just do it in increasingly ridiculous ways. So one week he would show up and drive a Zamboni to the ring and then run over the top of it, just beat Vince's ass. And then, the one that you just put on the chat there, that's from when he was bad guy. And that stuff is just hilarious. That's late era Austin. I'm talking 98, 99. Austin would show up and people would just lose their minds. And that stuff it's a thing of beauty. It really is. It's
when he sprayed Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon with a beer truck.
With the beer, the beer truck is classic.
The beer truck. No, the beer truck, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin filling Vince McMahon's Ferrari or something like that with a cement.
Yeah,
he backed up a cement truck and just dumped a whole whack of cement into his car.
You know what I mean? His feud with The Rock. His feud with The Rock. I mean, if you want to understand why The Rock is the biggest star in the world now, look no further than the shit he was doing in '98, where he'd been in wrestling for 3 years, and he's just one of the most compelling people to watch. Like his and Austin's feud, especially that promo he cuts on the bridge when he throws Stone Cold off the bridge and his championship too. Is unbelievable. So yeah.
All right. So we're gonna wrap this up here because we've been talking for a while.
Before you wrap, I do want to say one thing.
Okay.
Yes.
What?
I feel like with you guys talking about all this, like I have been taking like some notes and try to keep up. I have seen a new perspective on this, and I actually do think I'm gonna check out some of the stuff that you guys are throwing in the chat here and some of the stuff that you've recommended. I'm gonna give it a second chance.
We did it.
I don't normally give things a second chance, but I'm gonna give wrestling a second chance because I feel like maybe there's something there that I didn't see in that crazy wacko shit I saw.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Now, before we go, I'm gonna give you, Rivers, a chance to plug all your stuff.
And sure.
We're gonna give you a chance to plug all your stuff. So give her down, man.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Rivers Langley, and you can check out my podcast. It's called The Goods from the Woods. It used to come out once a week, but now that we don't have anything else going on, we have kind of reformatted a little bit, and we now put out 3 episodes a week, where we kind of run down the day's news. We've kind of retitled those episodes The Corona Diaries. At some point, when we are allowed to have guests back on the show, we will probably go back to, more regular, but man, we've had so much fun, in this horrifying, awful time, going through, running, cause I'm quarantined with all the people I do the show with. So we actually can all sit in the same room and chat about what's going on and not feel crazy every day. And then we do fun stuff like we read the comment section of, like Kid Rock's American Badass on YouTube, which is, that has become my new favorite thing, is reading the comment section of various like dumb YouTube things, because it's truly the voice of the people.
The judge's humanity right there, really.
It really is. But so we do all kinds of fun stuff. I mean, it's kind of a news rundown, but then we're all out of our goddamn minds, so it's a lot of fun. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/thegoodspod. And right now, if anybody new signs up for the Patreon, we just got a bunch of new stickers. One of them, WWF Classic Monday Night Raw font, by the way.
Nice.
So if you sign up for the Patreon, I'm going to send you some new stickers, or if you just DM me on Twitter, I'll probably send them to you too. So
I think I need some more, some new ones. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a bunch, Adam. So at Rivers Langley, hit me up, and let's chat. Because guess what, baby, I'm not doing nothing. I got all the time in the world to chat to the great listeners of There's Nobody Here Named Josh.
The great way north.
I got nothing but time.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to end this right now. Thanks everyone for listening to There's Nobody Here Named Josh podcast. I'm Kevin, your host, alongside Will.
I'm also here.
Will is also there.
I am also here.
Yeah. This is produced by Adam Upper, who's also right there. Where'd he go?
I'm right here.
There you are. AKA Stone Chunkman. Our logo was created by the amazing Aaron Alessandrini, who is normally here, but he's not here today. You can follow what we're doing on our social media. That there's no Josh on Instagram and Twitter, and there's nobody here named Josh Podcast on Facebook. And you can find us on YouTube, and you can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts.